Hello! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Mariel, and if you have followed me for some time now, then you know that I like to cover a bunch of different aesthetics. I've done videos on dark academia, cottagecore, fairycore, grunge fairycore, and somehow I still haven't done a video on goblincore. And I think it's a pretty popular aesthetic, or it's kind of gaining traction right now, so I really wanted to do a video on this. And since you guys really like my how to build a blank wardrobe, I thought I'd do one like this for goblincore. And if you have any other suggestions on how to build a blank wardrobe videos, let me know in the comments below. I love learning about new aesthetics and looking into different fashion styles, so leave a comment. But anyways, if you've never heard of goblincore, it first popped up around the 2010s on Tumblr, like most aesthetics, but recently it's been gaining popularity again, and I suspect it's through TikTok. And if you follow me on TikTok or Instagram, I have a series where I list keywords to search for clothing for different aesthetics, and I do have one on goblincore, and it's pretty popular compared to some of the other aesthetics I have up, so I do think it's really gaining popularity right now. Basically, it's an aesthetic based on the aspects of nature that aren't really considered conventionally beautiful, such as mud, rocks, worms, frogs, insects, mushrooms. I personally think mushrooms are pretty cute though. And it has a lot of similarities with cottagecore, of course the nature theme, but it's kind of like a darker cousin to cottagecore. I think it also has a lot of similarities to grandpacore fashion-wise, as well as a little bit of similarities to fairycore and grunge fairy, and even a little bit of dark academia and chaotic academia mixed in there. Secondhand and thrifted clothing is also really popular in this aesthetic because you kind of want that comfy, worn-down look, and you want to be wearing things that you don't mind getting dirty because you'll be like foraging in the woods or going on adventures theoretically. So secondhand clothing is perfect for that, and in general anyways, I always recommend thrifting or buying secondhand first when it comes to building a new wardrobe. Some other names for goblincore would be gremlincore or corvidcore / crowcore, which I think are great alternatives because goblincore does have some controversy surrounding its name and origins, which I think is really important to acknowledge and discuss here. Goblincore has been criticized for being anti-Semitic because goblins, which are often depicted as greedy or ugly, are often used as an anti-Semitic caricature. I think it's important to call this out, and even if it wasn't intentionally meant to be anti-Semitic, because goblins are so often used to portray negative stereotypes, it kind of ends up being anti-Semitic anyways. So from this point in the video, I'll be calling it gremlincore, and hopefully we can all sort of steer the name to become gremlincore or corvidcore or crowcore instead of using the term goblincore, which I feel like is the most popular term for this aesthetic right now. With all that being said, I know you guys really came here for the fashion, so before we jump into that, don't forget to like and subscribe this video if it does help you out, and leave a comment on what kinds of videos you want to see in the future. Follow me on Instagram and on TikTok for even more aesthetic and fashion content, and let's get started. So first of all, I wanted to go over some general details and materials to look for when searching for gremlincore items. So first of all, for a color palette, I would go for like a dark, earthy tone color palette, so especially like greens and browns. And with gremlincore, I feel like you could also do some color clashing and pattern clashing as well. Similarly, you can have clashing layers. I feel like lots of layering would work really well with gremlincore, so just kind of play around with it. There's a lot of room to play around with it. Just throw on whatever you have and see what looks good, and that's how I would go about it. I mean, that's how I come up with a lot of outfits myself, honestly. So once you have your basics, just play around with layering them. Corduroy is a really good material to look for gremlincore. It's a really cozy material. You can find it in earthy colors, and it's very sturdy, perfect for adventures. I also see a lot of buttons with gremlincore, handmade items like handmade jewelry, and especially jewelry that you make out of items you find, because I feel like one of the activities of corvidcore, crowcore, or gremlincore would be like finding little things, kind of like how a crow collects small objects and shiny items. Like I mentioned earlier, secondhand clothing is really good for gremlincore because you want that worn, torn clothing look. And similarly, you can also go for patches, like patches on your pants or on the elbows of your jackets, or just on any holes you have on your clothes. I think oversized fits for clothes would also look really good for this aesthetic, like oversized tops, oversized sweaters, oversized overalls. That would really fit this aesthetic well. And finally, you can look for nature themed motifs like frogs, mushrooms, insects, things you wouldn't find conventionally beautiful like I mentioned earlier. So try to stray away from things like flowers. I think that would fit cottagecore more. Now let's move on to basics. Now I know it can be pretty difficult to build a whole new wardrobe from scratch, so if you are doing that, you don't have to buy all of these items, of course. Just pick and choose what you like and what you want to start off your wardrobe with. For tops, the first thing I think of with Gremlin Core would be an oversized sweater or cardigan, especially like a striped or patterned one similar to a grandpa core sweater or cardigan, which I think can be pretty difficult to find. You definitely have to thrift or buy them secondhand, but I've also seen some options on like YesStyle. If you're on a budget and you don't have access to thrift stores, there's also secondhand sites and apps like Depop, Poshmark, ThredUp that I always mention in my videos. That's always an option too. Turtlenecks are another good basic to have and a pretty great basic to have in general. I feel like you can style them with pretty much any aesthetic. You can also go for button-down shirts or like flannel shirts for some layering pieces. Henleys would also look really good with Gremlin Core outfits. And finally, you can go for simple t-shirts, especially ones with nature theme motifs, and especially kind of like worn vintagey ones, because you want that kind of comfy look again. For outerwear, one option would be a corduroy jacket. Like I mentioned earlier, corduroy is a really good material to have for a Gremlin Core wardrobe. You can also have like a kind of patterned jacket or blazer, or an oversized blazer in general. And that's where I feel like the Dark Academia, Chaotic Academia similarities come in. But you could also go for like a canvas jacket, and that's more like adventure core in my opinion, and it has a really outdoorsy vibe, which also fits the Gremlin Core aesthetic. For bottoms, a good sturdy pair of jeans is a great basic to have in general, and especially for this aesthetic. You can also go for overalls, especially corduroy overalls. I see a lot in Gremlin Core inspiration pics, which I think really looks really cute. Or you can go for corduroy pants or pleated trousers, or even plaid or patterned trousers would work here. I would just go for like an earthy color tone again. And same with skirts. If you like to wear skirts, I think they could still work with this aesthetic, whether it's a mini skirt or one of those long flowy skirts that you would typically see with like cottagecore or fairycore. I think you can still wear them with Gremlin Core outfits and just go for like darker earthy tone colors. Again, stick with the color palette. A brown colored skirt would be a good option to start off with, because I think you could pair that with a lot. Next, some options for accessories would be some old, vintage, tarnished jewelry, or some handmade jewelry like I mentioned earlier, whether you make it yourself or buy from like a local business or a small business online. I think those would fit the Gremlin Core aesthetic really well. Unique patterned socks would also fit this aesthetic, especially ones with nature themes, you know, frogs, mushrooms, whatever. Maybe even mismatched socks could fit, because you kind of want to go for that messy or like carefree kind of look with Gremlin Core. A little rucksack or satchel would also fit these outfits really well. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons it's called Crowcore is the love for collecting little objects and small items. So you need somewhere to carry that stuff. Similar to fairy grunge or grunge fairycore, you can also wear some arm warmers, maybe even leg warmers. And then finally, another good basic would be like a brown leather belt. Finally, for shoes, the first one that would come to mind would be like a good pair of boots, like a brown lace-up boot, something you would wear going for a walk in the woods or foraging in the woods or something like that. You could also go for sneakers that you don't mind getting dirty, or like a pair of chunky derby or Oxford shoes. I really like this pair from Unif. This one is like what I imagine we would wear with a Gremlin Core outfit. Or you go for some dogs. So those are the basics that I could think of for a Gremlin Core wardrobe. If you have any other ideas, definitely let me know in the comments down below. And I hope this helped you out. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I really hope this helped you out, and I hope it gave you some inspiration for building your own Gremlin Core wardrobe. And again, leave some comments if you have some ideas for another wardrobe building video or any other video suggestions in general. And follow me on Instagram at The Dress Relief and on TikTok at Dress Relief for more fashion and aesthetic content. And I'll see you guys next time.